The bustling streets of Manila buzzed with the typical urban chaos of a Thursday afternoon. The tropical sun beat down mercilessly on the asphalt, while street vendors occupied every available corner, their calls echoing between towering buildings and modest houses squeezed side by side. Amid the deafening noise of jeepneys and the intense aroma of street food, a solitary figure walked slowly along the uneven sidewalk, carrying a wicker basket worn by time. Nanay Corazon Delgado, 72 years old, adjusted the scarf protecting her graying hair from the relentless sun. Her calloused hands gripped firmly the basket filled with still warm pandesal, the traditional Filipino bread she had been preparing since 4 in the morning in her small kitchen. Each step was calculated, every movement conserved to preserve energy that was no longer what it had been decades ago. Her tired but still bright eyes scanned the crowd searching for potential buyers. The simple faded blue cotton dress, mended in several places, told the story of a life dedicated to hard work. Corazon had raised 5 children as a single mother, working as a nanny for wealthier families for decades. Now in her golden years, she sold bread on the streets to supplement her meager pension. Each peso earned represented not just survival, but dignity maintained through unwavering determination. The crowd flowed around her like a constant current, anonymous faces lost in their own concerns and destinies. Few stopped to look at her merchandise, and even fewer bought anything. Corazon didn't let herself be discouraged by the indifference. She had learned long ago that perseverance was her greatest ally. Her silent prayers mixed with the city's noise, asking only for enough sales to buy rice and fish for dinner. Across the street, a man of medium height wearing a cap and dark sunglasses watched the scene with growing familiarity. Manny Pacquiao had decided to walk through the streets of his hometown, away from the spotlights and commotion that normally surrounded him. Something about the elderly woman's posture made him stop abruptly, as if a distant memory had been awakened by an invisible trigger. The world champion's heart began to race as fragments of the past danced in his mind. Recognition came like lightning on a clear day. Manny slowly removed his dark sunglasses, his eyes widening as he studied every detail of the woman's face in the distance. The shape of her eyes, the particular way she tilted her head, the gentle smile that emerged even in the face of difficulties, all of this instantly transported him to the darkest days of his childhood in General Santos City. It was impossible to forget the face of the person who had been his second mother, when his own family could barely put food on the table. Corazon Delgado had been more than a nanny to the neighboring family. She had become the guardian angel of children, abandoned by parents who worked from dawn to dusk. Manny vividly remembered how she would find him wandering the streets, dirty and hungry, offering him not just food but genuine affection. Her warm hands would clean his muddy face while whispering words of comfort that penetrated deep into his lost little boy's heart. For months, when the situation at home became unbearable, Manny found refuge in Corazon's humble residence. She never asked where he came from or why he was there. She simply opened her arms and her heart. She prepared extra portions of rice and shared her simple meals, even when it meant she would eat less herself. Her bedtime stories didn't come from expensive books, but from her life wisdom, teaching values that would shape the character of the future champion. The boxer remembered how Corazon used to dry his tears after fights at school, teaching him that true strength came from kindness, not violence. She encouraged him to dream big, even when everything around seemed to be falling apart. Her words still echoed in his mind today, that one day he would be someone special, that his struggle would be worth it. She never charged anything in return, never made him feel like a burden. When Manny's family finally managed to stabilize, and he began to seriously dedicate himself to boxing, he lost contact with Corazon. The decades that followed were a whirlwind of training, fights, travel, and worldwide glory. But now, seeing her there, selling bread on the street with the same dignity as always, he felt a lump in his throat. Time had passed, but the essence of that extraordinary woman remained intact, still caring for others through her silent generosity. Manny crossed the street with cautious steps, his heart pounding against his chest. Decades of experience in the ring hadn't prepared him for the emotion that took hold of his being in that moment. Each step brought him not only physically closer to Corazon, but reconnected him with the purest part of his humanity. The worldwide fame, the titles, the millions, all of this seemed insignificant compared to the importance of that woman in his formation as a person. He stopped a few meters away, pretending to examine other vendors' merchandise while discreetly observing Corazon's every movement. She maintained the same gentle patience from decades ago, offering her bread with a warm smile to each passerby who approached. Even when some buyers aggressively haggled over the already low price, she responded with courtesy, never losing her composure or the dignity that had always characterized her. The champion noticed how her hands trembled slightly, not from nervousness, but from the weight of years and tireless work. Her clothes were clean, but clearly old, carefully preserved and mended with self-respect. The worn shoes told stories of kilometers walked in search of honest sustenance. It was evident that life hadn't been financially generous to her, but her erect posture and genuine smile showed an inner wealth that no money could buy. A wave of contradictory emotions invaded Manny. He felt simultaneously grateful to find her again and guilty for having lost contact for so long. How could he have allowed the person who gave him unconditional love in the most difficult moments to disappear from his life? Success had consumed him so much that he had forgotten to honor those who planted the seeds of his greatness long before the world knew his name. He took a deep breath, adjusted his cap to try to maintain anonymity a little longer, and finally approached. Corazon looked up when his shadow projected over the basket of bread, and for a brief instant, something familiar shone in her gaze. But the expression quickly transformed into the professional smile of an experienced vendor, without yet recognizing the man who stood before her. The moment of revelation was approaching, and Manny knew that his life and hers was about to change forever. Manny silently pointed to some bread in the basket, keeping his head down while Corazon carefully selected the best pieces. Her aged hands worked with the same delicacy as always, wrapping each piece of bread as if it were a precious gift. During this routine process, she murmured gently about the quality of the flour and the care put into the preparation, exactly as she used to do decades ago when preparing special snacks for the children under her care. The boxer observed each familiar gesture, each expression that remained unchanged by time. When she extended her hand to receive payment, Manny deliberately placed the coins so that their palms would touch. The physical contact awakened something deep in Corazon's memory. Her hands knew that touch, even after so many years. She slowly raised her eyes, studying the face partially hidden by the cap, while a growing uneasiness took hold of her being. A gentle breeze swayed the hair that escaped from Corazon's scarf, and for a magical moment, time seemed to stop. Manny slowly removed his cap, revealing the face that had been on newspapers and televisions around the world. But for her, it wasn't the world boxing champion who was there. It was the lost boy she used to find in her streets, the small heart that had learned to dream in her humble kitchen. Corazon's eyes filled with tears instantly, her hands trembling as reality settled in. It couldn't be possible. Destiny couldn't be so kind. The boy she had cradled during difficult nights, whom she had fed when he had nothing, whom she had encouraged to pursue his impossible dreams, was there before her, not as the vulnerable child of her memories, but as the extraordinary man that the whole world knew and admired. The basket of bread slipped from her hands, scattering across the sidewalk floor, but neither of them cared. Manny immediately knelt down, not to collect the bread, but to be at eye level with the woman who had shaped his soul. Tears flowed freely down Corazon's aged face as she extended a trembling hand to touch the face of the man who had once been her boy. In that sacred moment, surrounded by the chaos of the city, they existed only for each other, connected by invisible but unbreakable bonds of true love. Tears flowed uncontrollably down both their faces as they remained there, kneeling on the busy sidewalk, oblivious to the curious stares of passers-by. Manny gently held Corazon's aged hands, feeling every wrinkle, every callus earned through decades of hard work. Those same hands that had dried his childhood tears, that had prepared countless meals with love, that had offered comfort when the world seemed too hostile for a lost boy. Corazon studied every detail of the mature face before her, searching for and finding traces of the boy she had known. The eyes remained the same, gentle, determined, capable of touching vulnerability. The scars from boxing couldn't mask the natural kindness that had always emanated from him. Even transformed into a world icon, he remained there, humble and genuine, exactly as she had always known he would be when he grew up. The champion remembered specific nights when he would arrive at Corazon's house hungry and injured, the result of fights at school or the harshness of street life. She never asked invasive questions. She simply received him, cleaned his wounds with maternal care, and fed him until he felt strong again. Her stories about perseverance and faith planted seeds that bloomed in every victory achieved throughout his extraordinary career. Corazon vividly remembered how Manny used to help her with household chores, always offering his small hands for any work he could do. Even being just a child, he demonstrated deep gratitude that touched her heart. He swept the yard, helped hang clothes on the line, and even tried to help in the kitchen, always eager to reciprocate the kindness received. This natural generosity remained intact in him, now multiplied by the success and resources he had conquered. The crowd began to form a discreet circle around them, some recognizing the world champion, others simply touched by the palpable emotion of the scene. But Manny and Corazon remained in their intimate bubble, reconnecting through shared memories that transcended any temporal or social barrier. The pure and selfless love that united them decades ago resurfaced with full force, proving that certain human connections are truly eternal and unbreakable. Gradually, the initial emotion of the reunion gave way to an urgent need for Manny to understand Corazon's current situation. With delicacy, he helped her stand up and insisted they sit on a nearby bench, away from the intense movement of the sidewalk. His questions were carefully formulated, showing respect for her dignity, while trying to understand how someone so special had reached this situation of financial vulnerability. Corazon, still emotional but regaining her composure, began to share her journey of recent years. She explained how she had worked as a nanny until she was 65, when advanced age finally limited her employment opportunities. Her pension was insufficient to cover basic needs, especially with the constant increase in the cost of living in Manila. Selling bread on the streets had become her only alternative to maintain the independence and dignity she valued so much. The champion discovered that she lived alone in a small rented apartment, which consumed most of her meager income. Her children had grown up and formed their own families, facing their own financial difficulties in the Philippines' challenging economy. Corazon had chosen not to be a burden to anyone, preferring to fight alone with the same determination that had always characterized her. This fierce independence, though admirable, also isolated her from possible sources of help. Manny felt a mixture of admiration and anguish hearing about her exhausting routine. Corazon woke up at 3 in the morning to prepare the bread, walked kilometers through the streets under sun and rain, and rarely managed to sell all her merchandise. Some days she returned home at a loss, others she barely managed to cover the cost of ingredients. Even so, she maintained serene optimism, trusting that each new day would bring better opportunities. The most touching revelation came when Corazon mentioned that she had never stopped praying for Manny over the years. Even without knowing his whereabouts or successes, she included him in her daily prayers, asking for protection and happiness for the boy who had once brightened her life. She followed his fights on television whenever possible, filling with maternal pride at each victory, as if it were her own son conquering the world. This silent and constant devotion deeply touched the champion's heart. That night, Manny couldn't sleep. Lying in his luxurious residence, his thoughts remained fixed on the image of Corazon selling bread under Manila's scorching sun. The disparity between their current lives deeply disturbed him. While he enjoyed a fortune conquered through the talent she had helped nurture, the woman who had planted the seeds of his greatness struggled daily for basic survival. This injustice of fate needed to be corrected, but in a way that would preserve her dignity. The champion knew that Corazon would never accept direct charity. Her proud and independent nature would reject any offer that made her feel like a recipient of pity or obligation. The solution needed to be carefully crafted, presented in a way that would make her feel valued and respected, not diminished. Manny spent hours developing a plan that would honor both his gratitude and the upright character of the woman who had saved him in childhood. During the following days, Manny discreetly mobilized his trusted team. They carefully investigated Corazon's housing situation, discovering that she paid high rent for inadequate space in poor condition. They identified a simple but dignified house in a safe and quiet neighborhood, close to markets and with easy access to public transportation. The property had a small yard where she could grow plants, a spacious kitchen for her culinary projects, and enough rooms to receive her family. Simultaneously, Manny planned a surprise that would touch Corazon's heart even more deeply. He located some of the other boys she had cared for over the years, now adult men with their own families, scattered across different parts of the Philippines. Many remembered her with affection and gratitude, but had lost contact over time. The reunion would be the most precious gift he could offer to someone who had dedicated her life to caring for abandoned children. The execution of the plan required perfect timing and absolute discretion. Manny didn't want to turn the gesture into a media spectacle or personal marketing opportunity. This moment belonged exclusively to the two of them, the child who had been saved by unconditional love, and the woman who had planted seeds of greatness without expecting recognition. The gift would be delivered with the same humility and genuineness that had characterized all the moments they had shared decades ago. 1 week after the reunion, Manny appeared again at the location where Corazon sold her bread. This time, he was accompanied by two people she didn't immediately recognize, a lawyer and an accountant, both carrying important documents. The champion approached her with the same gentle smile from childhood, but there was something different in his eyes, a special determination that she couldn't completely decipher. With delicacy, Manny asked her to accompany him for an important conversation. Corazon hesitated initially, worried about abandoning her sales post, but something in his expression convinced her it was essential. They walked together to a nearby cafe, where he had reserved a private corner. There, away from curious stares and the noise of the street, the champion finally revealed the reason for his search over the past few days. Corazon was speechless when Manny presented the keys to a completely paid-off house in her name. It wasn't an extravagant mansion, but a simple, comfortable, and dignified residence, with everything she needed to live with tranquility and security. The lawyer explained that all documents were in order, all taxes paid indefinitely, and that the property was exclusively hers without any conditions or obligations. The gift came from the heart, not from a contract. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. Manny had discreetly created a bank account in her name with sufficient resources to guarantee her financial security for the rest of her life. The amount wasn't ostentatious, but would allow her to live with dignity, buy food without worry, take proper care of her health, and even help her children when necessary. All of this was presented not as charity, but as fair recognition for the investment she had made in his life decades ago. Corazon's emotion was indescribable. Tears flowed freely down her face as she held the house keys and looked at the documents that represented a complete transformation in her reality. But what touched her most weren't the material goods. It was the demonstration that the love and care she had offered to a lost boy had borne fruit in eternal gratitude. Manny knelt before her once more, not as the world champion he was, but as the boy she had saved, saying with tears in his eyes that he could finally repay a small part of what she had given him. In that sacred moment, surrounded by Manila's common commotion, two souls reconnected through the transformative power of true gratitude. Corazon would never again need to sell bread on the streets under the scorching sun, but she would forever carry the memory that small acts of kindness can echo through decades, returning multiplied when we least expect it. And Manny had finally found inner peace, knowing he had adequately honored the woman who had planted the first seeds of his greatness, long before the world knew his name.
Leave your like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next cases.